We are live streaming our 125th Ask Virardi episode, and I'm so proud and happy to have here John Vickers. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. It took 124 episodes for you to invite me, right?
I knew you would start with your humor. I will let you know a few things about John, even though I'm sure that most of our audience knows a lot about John. But let me come back to you in just a little while.
Sure.
Dear friends and fans, last week we had Nikos Saris, the managing director and chairman of Eureka Company, for our 124th episode. It took me quite a while to invite him as well. The winners from that episode were the following: Lucas Dimitriou with a meeting and lunch with Mr. Nikos Saris. Sergio Sergiu and Haris Michael win €150 vouchers with Evrica products. So congratulations. Please get in touch with my personal assistant Marina Diplaru or directly with Eureka Company. They're already informed. Just to let you know, we have 3 seats left for our Address for Success Speaking in Public, How to Win Over an Audience, which is going to take place on the 13th of June at the Four Seasons. And at this seminar, you will find out not only how to communicate, but also how to connect with your audience, being an audience of one or an audience of many. Our next speaker, our next guest, which will be in Athens, Greece, will be Mr. Theophanis Apadangelos. This is an award-winning agency delivering great websites and advertising in Greece and around the globe. So I'm going to be interviewing him from his offices live next week from Athens. So let's go back to my special guest for today, who's John Vickers, who set foot for the first time ever in Cyprus 45 years ago.
Next month.
Next month.
July, yeah.
Wow.
I was a baby, obviously.
Yes, you must have been, how, 5 years old?
Ah.
You didn't say you set foot with your parents or if you set foot on your own, to be honest. He's known to the over 40s for his radio programs. He introduced several generations to the international pop and rock music. He also recorded 5 albums of his own, one of which we will be giving out as a present. I'm going to mention this in just a little while. He also worked in newspapers and television from 2002 to 2006. He was the chief editor of Time Out magazine, which he will be speaking to us about in just a little while, and also the chief editor of the bi-monthly international magazine Odyssey, The World of Greece. And in 2008, that's another gift we're handing out, he was one of the contributing factors for the very well-known Patakis publisher, which they published a Greek-English dictionary, which we will also be handing out as a present. And he also translated 20 books, one of which was mine. That's where we met with John.
Yes.
And last but not least, for the last 6 years, he has been the main influence and one of the contributing factors for the success of the Gold magazine, which is the business magazine which we have circulating here on the island of Cyprus. He's also, as I said, a musician, and even though he doesn't look his part, he's the grandfather of 3, and there is also another one coming up in the next few months, so a grandfather of 4 in just a few months' time. And a great friend. So John, once again, welcome to the Ask Virardi show.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
John, let's start with the first question of the day. Because we were getting a lot of congratulatory messages coming in, I'm not going to read all of them, but let me start with the first question of the day. From music to the media, being the chief editor of many magazines, the likes of Time Out, Odyssey, as I said before, as well as the Patakis dictionary, you translated many books as well. So my question to you is that I know for a fact that you're very capable and very passionate in what you do. Is that something you've been doing in all the businesses you have carried out up to now? Or at the beginning you were getting, just to make ends meet, you opted for doing professions or work that wasn't your passion?
No, I have to say that I think I've been very lucky throughout my life here in Cyprus. Of course, when I came here in 1972, I think things were very different from how they are now. And I think that at that time, particularly for a foreigner, for an Englishman who came to Cyprus, it was really a question of, if you had a little bit of talent, there were a lot of opportunities. I mean, I actually got onto the radio. I'd never been on the radio before. I loved music. That was my passion. But through a strange sort of sequence of unusual events, I actually got myself there. I mean, I went to university. I studied French and Italian.
Wow.
And I studied that because I was good at languages. It wasn't because I knew what I wanted to do. It was not because I had any career in mind. And in fact, I even finished university and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. The only thing I knew that I didn't want to do was that I didn't think I wanted to teach. But when I came to Cyprus, the first thing I did was teach. And in fact, I discovered that I was actually quite good at it. But I think that overall, I have been lucky to be doing things that I like, that I love, and that I found that I was good at. So, I mean, and I think that this is actually a luxury which young people today probably don't have. I mean, but we're talking about 45 years ago, so
yes.
it was different.
It was a different
absolutely.
But do you think you attract these things because of the luxury, or do you think it's sort of a karma helping you to go towards these things?
I've never looked at it in those sort of mystical terms. I just sort of thought that I was lucky that. I mean, I got into the radio just so that you know. I got into the radio because. When I came to Cyprus, after about 1 month, I saw an ad for a pop festival in Lisi village, at the stadium. And I thought, oh, maybe I can go and sing. Because, you know, I liked singing, I played the guitar and all this kind of thing. So I got in touch with the organizers who said, yeah, sure, okay. So I went and I did this concert. And there, the person presenting it was an English guy who worked for CYBC, for Rick. And the person organizing the concert said in passing, this is Jim Morgan, he works for Cyprus Broadcasting Corporation. Well, actually, he's leaving. In fact, they're looking for somebody to take his place. Well, you know music, you're English, maybe you could do it. And it was like that. And he said, I'm going to Rick on Monday. I can arrange for you to have a test. And on the 1st of October 1972, 2 months after I arrived here, I did my first program.
So the secret to success is showing up when you need to show up, as Donald Trump said in one of his books, show up and then do a good job or excellent work so people can take notice.
That's maybe true. I mean, it certainly led to... to an entire career for me.
Unbelievable.
It is rather.
Dear friends and fans, if you want a chance to win the Greek-English dictionary, just share this episode or mention someone you think he or she is worth watching it. Also, you can win John's CD album with music. This is old music, classical music, and one of his favorite books, which is The Black Swan, which John is going to be talking about in a little while. So your chance to win the books. Let's go to our second question of the day, John. In your current work, you work with a lot of pressing deadlines at Gold Magazine. I believe every third week of the month you have to publish your magazine, and the Monday before the third week you have to go to the press, if I'm not mistaken. So you need to put the magazine on the shelves. Can you share some of the strategies that you're using together with your team in order to meet those deadlines?
Okay, well, when you have I mean, it's a bit like, Groundhog Day, not quite as bad as the movie, if you know that one, in the sense that you finish one and then you have to start all over again to get the next one. The secret, I think, when you have any kind of deadline to work with, and I've worked on a weekly newspaper, I've worked on monthly magazines, I've worked on a bi-monthly magazine, it's all about planning, actually. It's all about planning ahead, it's about delegating, so you need to make sure that each member of your team knows exactly what they're expected to do. It's also about being flexible, because although when you work in the media and you know that you have a deadline, not everybody understands this concept. And so, for example, I mean, you understand it, but let me take you as an example. I mean, I might say, Michali, I need to interview you and I want you to come and have your picture taken for the next issue. And I might think to myself, he's a friend of mine, this is no problem. But you might say to me, John, I'm going to be away for 2 weeks. Or you may say, sure, I can do that. And then you may call me the day before the photo shoot and tell me, I'm sorry, I've got the flu, I can't come. The doctor said I have to stay in bed for a week. When these things happen, so the unexpected things happen, you have to have an alternative. You have to have a plan B, you have to have a contingency plan. So it's either, okay, Michalis can't do it, let's call this other person we have in mind. or this photographer can't do it, let's call the other one that we can do it for us.
So one of
you
the
always have
secrets
to have alternatives.
is to have an alternative.
You have to, yes. And I'm glad to say that, I mean, this, I can show you this. This is the latest issue. Number 75, no 74, I'm working on 75 now, you see, I'm already ahead.
You're already ahead.
And so far we've always managed to get it out on time. So,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Some other tips, John, for example, you pass on a deadline that happens to many organizations, to many managers. You pass on a task, a particular task, you complete it, you pass it on to the next person, and the next person never reverts back. I mean, because you crossed it off your list after you gave it to that particular person?
No, well, for Gold Magazine, I have a small team, and so we do virtually everything together. If it's a question of somebody has offered or asked to contribute an article, for example, then I will give them a deadline, I will give them certain details. If they don't get back, okay, then you have to politely remind somebody, and this kind of thing.
I understand.
Yeah, so it's basically, it's a question, I think, of always keeping in mind, what day it is, how many days are left, making sure that the people that you're dealing with are also aware of this, so that everything works as smoothly as possible.
So you pre-plan at the end of the day.
Absolutely, yes. It's essential, yeah.
We have congratulations to an amazing writer and a great journalist from Maria Evrebidis. Thank you very much, Maria. And Maria is also very kind enough to host us at bookyourweddingday.com offices. Thank you very much here at Regis.
Yes.
Yes. So, John, when you translated my book, Crisis, Let's Beat It, you went one step ahead. You've done that little extra by coming back to me, not only with a translation, by also pinpointing some of my quotes that they were attributed to certain people. You dug deep enough and you found that they should have attributed to somebody else. So you added value to me. This is what you normally do, and do you continue to add value in other businesses? And what is your advice to the young generation about that, about adding value?
Okay, well, I think I think everybody believes in added value, and I mean, as customers, we certainly like it. I've always taken the view that, whatever I do, I try to do my very best. And so, I mean this, I approached my radio programs, and I was playing records. Some people might think, what is this? Playing records on the radio, this is no big deal. But I approached that and informing listeners about everything I could about the singers and the artists and their new work and everything, because don't forget that we had no internet.
So how did you do it? How are you up to date?
I spent lots of money getting the latest magazines and the trade magazines from the UK and the States, and making sure I had friends that used to travel for work to England, and I would pay them to bring me the latest records back so I could play them for my listeners. I probably lost money on the deal. So in that sense, I didn't think of it at the time. I don't think I'd ever heard of this concept added value back then, but I think this is what I was doing. So, and as I said, I treated that job in exactly the same way as I treat editing Gold, or as when I was doing Time Out, or indeed when I was editing the dictionary. I mean, you have to basically give it all that you have, do the very best job you can, and essentially, you're trying to be better than anybody else who might be the competition. I have to say, I'll give you an example. When I first came here and I first got into journalism, I was writing a music column for the Cyprus Mail. Okay, so when I had this idea in mind, I'll call the Cyprus Mail and see if they're interested. The first thing I did, I went out and bought a typewriter, because I thought, okay, if I'm going to be writing articles and giving it to a newspaper, I have to give them, a decent-looking piece of work. It was only many years later that I discovered that half of the journalists in this country, at the time, not now, they were still writing with pen and paper, and they had other people there to type up their work.
Unbelievable.
So, in that sense, I always, without realizing it perhaps, but I always wanted to sort of give what I thought was the best or the essential thing that I would have to do.
Unbelievable. John, I am speaking from experience, because we have worked together and we're still working together in editing my blog posts books. And
yes,
the
I mean,
rest.
in your case,
Yeah.
sorry, you mentioned Cali. I mean, when you asked me to do the book, okay, I mean, I check things.
Yes, yes.
I'm a fact checker. I mean, this comes from being an editor as well. You don't want to, because somebody says something doesn't mean that they know it for sure. And people make mistakes. I mean, so do I, of course. So I remember that with those things, with some quotes, I thought, was it exactly that? Or in fact, I had to make sure I had the original quote in English. So,
I think you went 2,000 years back to find it.
And then, of course, it was a question of, but Michali says that it was from this guy, but actually it was that one. So, I mean, I couldn't, in all conscience, let you put something in your book which I knew was not right.
And you make me look good as well, which is very important.
Look even better.
Even better.
Not good, even better.
So, John, what is your advice to the younger generation who have just started working, provided that they have the skills? What is your advice?
Do your best. Do the best that you can. Learn from the people who know more than you. If you're in an office, for example. I mean, if you're a freelance, never stop learning new stuff. I mean, today, I mentioned earlier that I think I was very lucky and things were a lot easier when I first started work in Cyprus. It's a lot more difficult now. We live in an era where specialization is key to many issues. And so really you should try and be not as good as you can, and also better if you can than everybody else who might be your competition. Especially if you're a freelance. If you're in an office, there are going to be people who've been there longer than you. They know things that you don't know. Listen to them. Try and get them to help you. There is never anything wrong with saying, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. Could you explain it to me?
Excellent.
We all have to learn sometime.
I'm making notes like I'm your student. It's unbelievable. That's great advice, not only for the younger generation, our millennials, but also for each and every generation. John, who is one of your mentors, or who was one of your mentors, and what did you learn from him or her?
Well, in the sense that I can name you one person and I can say, I followed him and I believed him, and I don't have anybody. I'm sorry.
No,
I mean, in that sense, not. But what I could say was that, on the radio, as I told you, I mean, I just did what I thought I should be doing from my own experience as a listener. So I didn't have anybody to teach me that. In terms of journalism, I mean, I could definitely say that, I joined the Cyprus Weekly from its first issue in 1979. I was the music editor. And two of the three owners there were huge journalists. And they were, one was Alex Eftivoulou, who, apart from being well known in Cyprus, he was the correspondent of Associated Press. His partner was George Departog, who was the correspondent of UPI.
Yes.
Yeah, so there was nothing they didn't know about journalism. So it wasn't so much, having a one-on-one session with them as somebody might with you, for example. It was simply working with them, seeing how they did things, listening to what they told us, and eventually, you learn. You learn. I mean, it doesn't matter how old you are, you learn.
Unbelievable.
And I was learning from the best.
And you were learning from the best,
yes,
and you do appreciate it. You do remember the names, the
absolutely.
surnames.
Oh, yeah.
Everything. What is the biggest lesson you learned this year? When I say this year, I mean 2017 or maybe 2016, last year.
I know you like asking people this question. That's why I thought, I bet he's going to ask me this.
And now I know another thing about you. You do your homework.
I do.
Yes.
I always did. Not when I was at school, but since I was an adult, yeah. Yes. Well, I was going to say that I think I'm probably too old to learn new lessons, but in fact it's not true. And I think that if I learned something this year or last year, it was you have to know when to say no. And I mean, I get a lot of people asking me, especially for translations and for work, and it's very easy, and if the people are friends of yours, or if it's an interesting project, it's difficult sometimes to say, I'm sorry, I'm too busy, or I can't, or I haven't got the time. But of course, the result of this is that you suddenly find yourself with too many projects, a lot of work to do, not enough time, and at some point you have to say no in a polite way to somebody.
Thank God for asking, because you always tell me yes, and I was going to compliment you that you are very flexible, and I appreciate it very much. But thank you.
I am. Quite right. However, can't do everything.
Georgiana says, unique and amazing personality. She's talking about you, John. Hope I win the CD.
Okay.
Let's hope so, Georgiana. Let's hope so.
Thank you.
John, please suggest 2 books that have positively changed your life and why.
Okay. Well, you mentioned these 2, but in fact, I'll tell you about another 2 first. Because
yes, please.
I was trying. Well, I'm an avid reader, I have to say. I mean, I love books, and even though I have a Kindle, I still buy lots of books, real books, old-fashioned books. In the same way that I still do a real magazine, even though I know we can read online, etc. So, I mean, I could give you hundreds of titles, actually.
Just give us 2 and tell us why.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. They're neither of them, though, are books that perhaps if I asked you the question in an interview, you would give me a title and you would say that you learned this and and it turned you into a different person.
You know me well.
I know you well. Okay, the first one that I would say was a biography of Bob Dylan.
Okay.
The American singer and songwriter that came out in 1972, I think it was, 72, 73, by a guy called Anthony Scaduto. And the reason that this is so memorable is that it was probably the first music or pop/rock music biography that came out in the United States and later in the UK, which dealt with its subject with the same seriousness, if you like, as if he was doing a biography of a prime minister or a great actor or whatever. I mean, pop music, even in the early 70s, was still viewed by many people as, it's very light, it's not really serious, like they used to say about the cinema instead of the theatre. This guy wrote this biography of Bob Dylan, and he basically invented a new kind of music biography. So this is one of them, because I remember buying this. I still remember the photo on the cover. The other one, since you asked me for a book that changed my life, was I would say it's the first book I ever translated.
Which was?
Which was it was the memoirs of the first woman EOKA area commander, Mrs. Seraphim, the Cyprus liberation struggle. And I learned lots of things from that. I mean, first of all, I learned the story about, the 1955-59 thing, which I didn't know, and I learned it from her.
Or from her perspective.
From her, yes. Yeah. And also, I learned a whole lot of stuff about Cyprus, but I also learned a whole lot of stuff about the art of translation as well. It was the first one it was the first one I'd done. I mean, I'd done articles or whatever, but when you have, a 250-page book to do, I mean, it can be quite daunting, I mean, yours was quite a small book. Yeah. And I got used to it by then. Yeah. But I mean,
you practice on other people.
That's
why I hired you.
You start on page 1, and you think, oh my God, how long is this going to take? And I can assure you that when you get to the last page and the last word, the feeling is wonderful.
Unbelievable. So the question is, how long is this going to take, or have I charged the correct amount of money for translating?
You never charge the correct amount of money for translation. Sorry, but since you mentioned these two, the reason that I brought these books, one is this one, The Black Swan, by a guy called Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And the reason that I brought this is I can't say, I wouldn't go as far as to say that it changed my life. This is why I didn't mention it just now. But this is a book which, a lot of books we read because we want to learn. In fact, probably most books we want to learn. Maybe not so much with fiction, but with non-fiction, yes. There are books, though, that actually, we don't realize it until we're reading them, but they actually confirm things that we already know or that apply to us. And when this book, basically, he's the guy, he coined this phrase, the Black Swan, or Black Swan events.
Yes.
Which is for things which happen basically by chance to us. And I told you the story earlier of how I came to be working on the radio and how I happen to be here now with you, all because I saw an advert one day in the Cyprus Mail in 1972 about a pop festival. if I had considered, I mean, if when I had been in England at university, thinking, what am I going to do with my life? I could never have imagined any of this stuff. Everything, we all think that we plan, and we should plan, and we have aims and ideas, but in the end, it may well be that the most important things that happen to us, I mean, just like meeting your wife, for example, but also professionally and stuff, they're things that happen entirely by chance. And this is the very simplified, explanation of what this book is all about. But it's a great book, and I definitely can recommend it. The dictionary that Michalis mentioned is simply that, yes, when I was in 2008, I think it was, I had the opportunity to work as an editor, one of the editors, on a Greek-English dictionary, and the English-Greek one later, for Patakis in Athens. And this is also, I mean, okay, as a translator, and having lived here for so long, and because I learned the language and all this, you feel you have a certain amount of expertise. But when you come down to the details of a dictionary, and then somebody is going to get this one day and look up, what's this word? And you really have to make sure that you've given them all the possible choices and make it as simple and as correct as you can. I mean, it's actually a very, very precise kind of job that you have to do.
Can I ask something? When you're translating or when you're doing a dictionary, are you allowed to copy from other dictionaries the definition of the word? Is that pre-arranged or
No. Well, I mean, yes and no. By which I mean, if I want to know what a word means in the dictionary, I'm going to look it up. Okay, either online or in a dictionary. So when you are making your own dictionary, the obvious thing, first of all, is to see, okay, what does this one say? But you can't copy. I mean,
I'm asking if there is a procedure that you need to copy for one reason or the other.
You don't need to, and you shouldn't, in the sense that there's intellectual property issues and all this. On the other hand, if I want to know, what does this word mean? Okay, first let's look it up and see what they say.
Yes.
And is that a satisfactory meaning, or should we have others?
Should we elaborate?
Yes, and then you try and again, always trying to do better than everybody else.
So sorry, Steve Jobs, when you said that good artists copy, great artists steal. This artist doesn't. So John, one question before last, or the last question, because the last one is a statement.
Okay.
If you started all over again, would you have gone down the exact same professional route?
Listen, I think that, I'm sure you ask this question to other people, I don't know what they say, but I can't imagine that many people, particularly if they're quite happy and contented with their lives, would ever tell you, yeah, I wish I could do things differently. I mean, I can think of alternative routes. For example, I mean, in 1971, I was offered a recording contract with CBS Records in Paris.
Wow.
And I turned it down because I wanted to finish my university course. Now, some people would say, crazy guy, he didn't seize the opportunity. Other people would say, well, he's sensible, he's conservative, he's whatever.
And Bill Gates would have said you're crazy because he quit Harvard.
Yes, exactly. This is why he's a billionaire and I don't have any money.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, so in that sense, so I mean, I can maybe imagine alternative scenarios. But as far as my life is concerned, I mean, I really wouldn't. I've never sort of thought, I wish, I have regrets about this or that.
I believe you answered it, because the question could have been phrased, are you happy with your life? Have you gone down the route that you wanted to go? So having you next to me, judging from all our partnership and cooperation, knowing you as a person, I think you are quite content and happy with your life.
I think I am.
That's the feeling I get. So John, last message for our fans and friends here at the Ask Virardi. Most of them are millennials, the younger generation, but a message to each and every one of our friends and fans.
Okay, well, I've mentioned a couple of times, and I have to repeat, that times have changed. I mean, I am of a different generation from you. This is, unfortunately, can't do anything about that. Maybe that's something I would like to change, yeah. And I think that you have it more difficult than I did. But if you can find a way of differentiating yourself in any way, it will definitely help you. If you can do everything possible to be the best at what you can do, you'll be rewarded. You'll be rewarded. You may not be rewarded by money like Bill Gates was, but you will certainly be rewarded in terms of personal and job satisfaction. And, you know, personally, I mean, I keep mentioning my good luck in all my time in Cyprus. I mean, I really do believe this, that I've been very fortunate to be able to do things. I turned my hobby into, and my passion into work. I mean, I loved music, and then I found myself playing records for people on the radio. I mean, I'm a reader. I love languages. I love books. I find myself editing and working for the media, for the press. So, I mean, I've been very lucky. I don't know that everybody else can be, but you can certainly try as hard as you want to be the best that you can be, and I'm sure that you will succeed.
John, it was one of the most interesting interviews I had up to now. Really, because you spoke from your heart. Just to recap, dear friends and fans, John has said that if you don't know what you want to do, it's also good to know what you don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And he said that planning is very important. To fail to prepare is to prepare to fail. So John has talked through, you can watch this episode again and again, this live streaming episode, and see how he plans his workday and how his partners and collaborators help him do that. He said that you need to do the best at what you do. If you're working at an office, find mentors, find people who are doing the job you're doing and they're doing it very well, and learn from them. If you're a freelancer, never stop learning, because life is continually changing and you need to be updated. He said that you need to know when to say no to certain tasks so you can say yes to the rest and be efficient, punctual, and effective. He talked about his 2 books that really influenced him. One of them was an autobiography from Bob Dylan, and the other one was about the Cyprus Liberating Army, and he talked about what he learned through history. Last but not least, he said that being rewarded doesn't necessarily mean being rewarded with money. You can be rewarded in so many ways, and he feels content and fulfilled with the life he has lived and is still living. Thank you very much, John.
That was content.
Yeah. Content.
Content.
Content. Content. Thank you very
I'm
much.
editing you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Not at all.
It's a pleasure having you here. Thank you
Michael.
very much.
Thanks
All the best. Thank you.